Welcome to Madlit Musings, the podcast where you get to eavesdrop on your favorite authors without getting caught. I've been stoked to have authors like Angela Hunt, Bill Myers, Nicole Deese, Tessa Afshar, comedian Bob Smiley, and more on the show, and this year I have another great lineup of storytellers and truth-sayers. If you love to eavesdrop at coffee shops like I do, this is the podcast for you. It's where we get real, we get tough, we laugh, and we might even cry. It's where we meet authors on a different level, where every story and podcast episode has its own heartbeat. So hang out with me today. I'm Jaime Jo Wright, your host at Madlit Musings. This is your podcast for real chats with real authors about real life. Hey everyone, it's Jaime Jo Wright here at Madlit Musings, and today I have one of my favorite people in the world with me. I have Kendall Hoxsey from California. Hey Kendall.
Hello.
You know I love you, and this is fun, and I'm really happy to have you on here. So for those of you who are just tuning in, Kendall is a new author in the industry, and she's breaking out with some really great novellas. And I was privileged to meet you. Gosh, I think before you'd even written much of anything, right?
Yeah, everything was just in my own notebooks.
Yeah, in your notebooks, and you had lots of great ideas, and now you're a published author, and wow, I'm excited.
Yes, back when.
Yes, back when. And I think you were on the podcast one time talking about your first novella, which was A Christmas Suspense, and I always forget the title of that one.
Even though you helped come up with it.
I know. It's horrible. I'm horrible with titles. Let's just admit it.
An imminent Christmas threat.
That's right. An imminent Christmas threat. So that's a good one if you are a reader of romantic suspense. You can grab that one right now. It's available. It is a Christmas theme, but it's still really good because it has like a suspenseful romantic suspense element too. So it's super fun. And it's set in California vineyard lands. So if you are a vineyard and wine connoisseur, you'll love some of those little nuggets that Kendall throws in. So those are cool.
You'll learn some things too.
You will. I did. I did. It was really cool. But since then, you've come up with two more. You have Hearts of Redemption, which is part of the Hearts of the West series, which is multiple authors, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have another one that just came out, which is A Noble Intent. And that one is, how would you describe that one? I should let you describe it.
So it's a fairy tale retelling of Little Red Riding Hood.
Yes. Okay, so three novellas, all in different genres.
Yes.
That's exciting. Okay, so first and foremost, did you have one that was like more of your favorite? Like of the three, like obviously they're all your book babies, so they're all loved, but was one more fun than any of the others, or?
I think I really enjoyed the fairy tale retelling.
Yeah.
I mean, in a way, what, writer doesn't remember those fairy tales, when they were young that shaped them.
Right, exactly. And that one's called A Noble Intent. That one's also part of a fairy tale retelling series with multiple authors, correct?
Yeah, so that's called the Cornerstone series through Beyond the Bookery, which is a very small publisher.
Yeah. But that's fun because I love small publishers because a lot of times you get stories that you wouldn't necessarily see if they were coming out from a huge publisher from New York City or something. Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean they're any less amazing. It's just big publishers can only take so many. And so when you have small presses that can put out novellas and collections like that, you can just kind of get lost in the stories. So, yeah. All right. Well, let's talk about Noble Intent because that's your most recent release and that is the retelling. So give us an overview because every author loves to say what their book's about.
So basically so if you can think about the elements of the original fairy tale. Mm-hmm. So you have the grandmother, you have Little Red Riding Hood, and you have the Big Bad Wolf.
Right.
So in mine, you have Prince Max, who's trying to get back his usurped kingdom. Cadmium is the name of the kingdom. From, she's not queen because she hasn't been officially declared that, but she is the grandmother who took over the kingdom. Okay. And then her granddaughter, Gisela, is very bookish and likes to decipher texts. And so she's trying to figure out a way to help her grandmother to be named queen.
Right.
And so then we've got a little bit of subterfuge with then Max pretending to not be trying to, convince Gisela and Lady Vermilion is the
Hmm.
grandmother.
Yep.
And so, yeah, there's a lot of fun, and they go on a journey and trying to find the red diamond, which then gives that person the true power to be the king or queen.
Okay. Awesome. And how do wolves fit in with that?
So his elite warriors are the wolves.
Okay. All right. And they're not like actual wolves. They call themselves the wolves. It's like a
Yeah, so
warrior
there's no
name.
shapeshifters, there's none of that.
Hmm.
Basically, part of this had been so it's fairy tales, but non magical.
Okay. Okay. So it's really almost like you could almost see it happening, but it's kind of in a different made up world.
Yeah, because then I also have he's kind of like a prophet.
Okay.
He's called the Owl.
Okay.
And so he'll give them a little bit of guidance. So, kind of my writing style is I add a little bit of Christian faith and just,
Hmm.
rules that we should all live by.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
because, when you think about Prince Max and his whole life has been kind of revenge,
Hmm.
um, and that can't be your sole purpose in life.
Right.
I know having your family murdered, yes, but there's redemption in that. So you need to
Right.
you, you have to have other things. So yes, so that's what the owl his
Okay.
purpose is.
Yes. Now, I love, just because I know you, I love the fact that you have an owl in your book, because I know you happen to have a thing for owls yourself.
Oh, it's on the other side.
Yeah, it's on the other side. But you
Yeah,
do have an actual stuffed owl in your office, and
I do.
I've seen it. It's very pretty.
It's
That's
one of
awesome.
these. Yeah, I love that little guy, Archimedes.
Archimedes. Well, every owl has to be named Archimedes.
I know.
That's just true.
I just
Does
wish
that
he could
come from
talk.
like the Disney movie, The Sword and the Stone? Right?
That's it. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, he's so spicy and just
I
ill
know.
tempered. I love it.
I know. Now I want to watch that movie again. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, so the Little Red Riding Hood retelling with a noble intent. Now, you don't have her running around in a red cape, right? And you kind of alluded to the red diamond. So is that kind of more the cape, or am I wrong?
I do have her have a cloak, but it's an accessory.
Yeah. It's a nod to the fairy tale story,
It is. And towards the end, you'll see where there's the famous scene of my grandma.
though.
What what beard you have? So,
That's
but
awesome.
yeah, and I loved writing Lady Vermilion because, you want to write. I have a grandmother she's going to be 89.
Okay.
And oh my goodness. I mean, she's 50 years older than me, but she is just as vibrant and lovely and, takes care of herself. So, I love having those kind of grandmothers in there.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like sometimes with fiction, there's not enough of the older age group
Hmm.
of people. Like once you get into your mid 50s and on up, it's kind of like you might be an accessory character at some point, but I love it when they're really strong secondary characters because they add so much depth and layer. 'Cause they know so much more than we do.
Yes. Well, and a novella, as we've talked about, there's only
Yeah.
so much space.
Right.
So, my goal for this would also be, I think eventually down the line, I'll add in some more things, but,
Hmm.
you know, baby steps.
Baby steps. Baby steps. I love it. All right. And then before this one, then you wrote The Heart of Redemption, which now we're moving out of fairy tale and we're going into historical romance, if I'm correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So that story, so that came out in October of 24.
Hmm.
Um, but I wanted, so basically the parameters with that were we had to do something pre 1900
Okay.
and in the US,
Okay.
so west of the Mississippi.
Hmm.
And coming from California, there's a lot of things, and I feel like there's not a lot of stuff on California in the Christian market in historical fiction, really.
You're right. There
Um,
isn't.
and especially because, so we were a state in 1850, and before that, then we'd been part of Mexico, and even
Hmm.
and then pre 1820, we were part of Spain then.
Okay.
So there's been multiple things with
Right.
California. Anyway, so in my town of Yountville, there
Hmm.
is the Veterans Home. And that was founded in 1884.
Okay.
And again, there just wasn't much here. I mean, Napa didn't become Napa till the 1990s, really.
Right. Right.
Um, so it made me wonder, well, that would be interesting to kind of, what, why did the committee put it here?
Yeah.
There was the Presidio in San Francisco. So, and again, that
Hmm.
had been the original capital of California.
Okay.
But so, what caused that? So then that kind of got me going then of looking up that history. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, because also, little tidbit, the 1906 earthquake and subsequent fire destroyed all records.
Oh, I didn't realize that. You might
So,
have told me that when you were writing this, but I don't remember that. Okay. Okay.
yeah, so there's some, but there's not a lot. Because then when I was speaking to the archivist in Napa, she said, we don't have much. Um,
Hmm.
so, so I took that creative license then
Right. Right.
on creating my hero.
Hmm.
But I looked at who was around the area. So there was a gentleman called Cayetano Juarez,
Okay.
and he had been a born a Spaniard, then Mexico, and he'd served in the army,
Hmm.
and he had been granted a land grant, which is more eastern in the Napa Valley.
Hmm.
So, and his ranch was called Tulaque.
Okay.
Kind of, it just means like red earth.
Hmm.
And so he had that big rancho, and so parts of Napa, now the Tulaque Cemetery,
Hmm.
he gifted to us. There's still an adobe actually that had been around during his day, further in Napa, so
Okay.
more south here. And that's a little restaurant now, but all the original boards
Wow.
and adobe, and it's really cool.
That's cool.
Anyway, and so I made him a character with his wife Maria
Hmm.
and their granddaughter Carmen Lydia.
Hmm.
So that's the heroine.
Hmm. And then it's all built, well, the story is all built then around the founding of this veterans home, which I found was interesting because, my dad's a veteran of the, obviously not the Mexican War, Mexican American War, but the Vietnam War. But it is interesting when you think of it like veterans home, your brain instantly goes to something more contemporary in nature. And I found it so fascinating when I was reading your novella that they were worried about the care and the concern for their veterans back in a time that was, just post Civil War. So they were really looking at Civil War veterans and Mexican American war veterans. With the real history of this veterans home, did they accept all sides or were they geared toward one?
They were both, and I mean, I brought that in because that was the villain, and I don't
Hmm.
think this is giving away too much, but
No.
that's part of the villain's problem is that he was very upset because California is so woven
Yeah.
with just all of Latinos, so Mexican history and
Hmm.
Spaniard history, everything.
Hmm.
And so they did have both, but he was still a little bit angry at the gringos
Right.
of what happened.
Yeah.
But he's only mentioned; he's not brought up. But General Vallejo,
Hmm.
um, he did a lot for the Californians. But there's also then the side part that I don't bring in, but true history because Texas was going on. So Texas had its own kind of thing going on. The
Right.
Californians, wanted to kind of see like, could we do the same thing? So they
Hmm.
kidnapped a few of those. So they kidnapped, it wasn't General Mariano Vallejo, but I think his brother Salvador. I feel bad.
That's okay.
Historians,
That's right.
come at me.
Lots of details to remember.
You can come at me with the right names. But anyway, Cayetano had been kidnapped for a little bit, but like a week.
Hmm. Yeah.
Anyway, so there were and again, not the flow of information the way it is now. So yeah, and so that's why his son,
Hmm.
Carmen Lydia's father, is not for the veterans home.
Right. Right. There
Uh,
had to have been a lot of tension at that time in the area because so much of the area really did belong to Mexico and Spain. And and that has such a history that I think we don't hear a lot about, at least in the Midwest. I don't hear much about it at all.
No, and with Alta California, so I mean that was kind of trying to think where the border was, but basically, I'd say above Los Angeles.
Hmm.
It's called Alta California.
Okay.
Um, yeah, and so we always kind of think about what are the issues going on today, but I mean, throughout all my life, you know, they're just part of the fabric.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
And
that's,
so,
yeah.
I mean, I wish I spoke Spanish better.
Oh, yeah. So do I. So do I. I think it's almost critical nowadays to learn Spanish, to learn a second language. Um, I see people who have the ability to speak a second language, and I'm like, oh, you get so much further in life.
Yes.
That's very helpful. But all right. And then we step back from that one, and that's where we get to your imminent Christmas threat, which was the first novella. So if anybody wants to go back and listen to that podcast, it is still available. So we won't dissect that one a whole lot. But um now there's 14 books, 14 novellas in the Hearts of the West series, and again written by different authors. And then it looks like, I'm just cheating and looking on Amazon here, that there's 16 of the Cornerstone fairy tale retellings.
Mhm.
Okay. So what other fairy tales are like featured in that series? Do you know?
Let's see. They've got Goose Girl.
Okay.
They've got Thumbelina, Beauty and the Beast. They've got some and Bluebeard. I mean, so some of them I don't even know.
Oh, yeah. I'm not familiar with that one.
Um, yeah, so there's a fair amount of fairy tales I've never even heard of.
Okay.
So, but yeah, no, all the authors are great, and it was such a wonderful experience because everyone was so encouraging,
Cool.
and there were some where it was their very first novella.
Hmm.
Some like me where it was our second or third,
Okay.
and then others that I think probably their 10th. But all for the most part, all indie publishers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've been so lucky. I mean, Madison Carlin,
Hmm.
Mountain Peak edits and designs. So she did the covers for Hearts of the West
Okay.
and Cornerstone, and I just love them. They're
Yeah.
so pretty.
They're beautiful covers, which is so cool because I think, years ago when I was young, before I aged myself, um, but self-publishing oftentimes sort of had a little bit of a bad rap because the covers were never quite up to, industry standard. And so you could like, oh, that was self-published. And, there was kind of a stereotype of, well, if it's self-published, it's probably not as good but you don't see that nowadays. Like, I mean, sometimes I've purchased books solely based on the cover and I've got it and I've been like, oh, I had no idea this wasn't even from a big publisher, a big New York publisher or something. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, I mean, and coming from newbie still,
Hmm.
but the way ebooks and everything,
Yeah.
you really don't know unless you know to look in the details.
Right.
Um, but yeah, and I think just for ease of life too.
Hmm.
And I know that there are some authors who have huge backlists, and so they were probably traditional before
Right.
and just decided for what they want in life, and they're doing just fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of those books are getting re-released because one of the things I don't know if readers realize, once you publish a book, traditionally publish it, it stays in production as long as there's a relatively high demand. I mean, if you have a couple thousand people trying to purchase it every year, that's great. But if you start dropping below, then basically what happens is the book gets retired. And so whatever's out there in the world to be purchased is purchased. But that means that there's nothing else coming. So a lot of times the authors then get their rights back to those books. But then in the past, what did you do with them?
Mm.
And now they can re-release them with new covers, maybe new content, etc. So it's pretty cool. It's a neat part of the
Yeah.
industry. So
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because at least I feel like there's a shift coming, a bigger
yeah.
shift.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you can speak to that more than I can, but
Well, no, I think you're absolutely right. I think there's a shift coming because you're starting to see traditional authors like myself that are dabbling their feet in both waters, traditional publishing and then some of their own things that, I'll be putting out some self-published stuff here in the future. And I don't think it's a bad thing or, or any sort of detrimental thing. I think it's just kind of cool to see that the world is opening up. And let's face it, I mean, readers are not going to complain if they get more stories to read. So,
No, and I mean, sometimes I feel where, before, if maybe one group had really liked fairy tales, but then if they liked that story with Amazon,
right.
they can look at that author and like, oh,
Yeah.
they have something else.
Right.
Well, I'm not a fan of historical fiction, but I'll give it a shot.
Right. Right. Yeah, I mean, and you look at that's the cool thing with authors, especially if they're self-published. You can kind of genre. Oh, say that fast 3 times. Genre jump, and try different genres, which a lot of times is frowned on because they're like, well, Jaime Jo writing rom-com, you haven't built up your readership. I mean, your readers don't follow you for rom-com. Well, I'm not writing a rom-com. This is not an announcement,
I
by
would
the
pay
way.
money to read that though. I would.
That's what I'm saying, though, because you do get followers, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh, well, I might not read Jaime Jo Wright's Gothic Mysteries, but if she wrote a rom com, I'd read it." And then you'd probably never read another one because you'd be like,
All
"I don't
readers
think she
out
can
there,
write them."
please convince her to do that because I want to read that one.
I don't even know if I could come up with a plausible scenario. They'd end up in some really bad situations.
I think well, no, just knowing you, I think you put up some pretty funny scenarios, but
Yeah, it could be. Maybe I'll write a rom com where the lead heroine is goth and very dark in nature, and she meets some preppy, handsome computer programmer or something. I don't know.
have him be a romance cover model.
Model. Oh my gosh. Oh boy, I'm going to be getting emails after this one. Thanks a lot, Kendall. Guess what? We're co-writing a rom-com.
Let's do it. I'm on it.
All right. That sounds good. That sounds good. Oh, funny. But no, I mean, it is. It just shows how much the book world is exploding with new stories, new authors, new ideas. And it's one of the reasons I like having this podcast so people can meet, because there's so many. It's hard, like you stumble over certain people sometimes, but if you don't know that they're out there, it's not like they just show up in your cart. So
No, and I mean that's how I didn't even know there was the Christian book industry before.
yeah,
And
that's crazy.
because most of my backlist had been historical fiction, and then
Hmm.
so Amazon had then suggested Laura France,
Ah,
and again, and then I read her. Oh, this is good. And then all of a sudden, I said, "Well, let's follow her on Instagram," and then that led me to you. So I mean,
it's just crazy.
it's interesting where I mean, in a way, who would have put Laura France and Jane Joe together?
That is kind of weird. That is a little weird. Except Laura and I are good friends. So, and that's the cool thing that I love. I can't speak for the general market because I haven't really networked with other authors in the general market, but I do love that in the Christian market. Like, you're not defined by competition. And if you're in the same genre or completely different, there's still this really fun community. Like, so many of the authors know each other.
Mhm. Oh yeah, no, and I was fortunate enough to spend some time with Michelle and Greep
Hmm.
and Tara Johnson, and
Yeah.
so yeah, everybody's so warm and welcoming. I'm
Yeah.
very lucky.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you all are wanting to follow an up and coming author, you're definitely going to want Kendall Hoxsey on your follow list in Amazon. So Amazon lets you know every time she comes up with something. You are working on something else, aren't you?
Yes, so back into historical fiction,
Hmm.
and so the concept is 12 Carols of Christmas,
Okay.
and so mine will be on a little town of Bethlehem,
Okay.
and the title is Watch of Wandering Love.
Ooh, I like that. And that's historical.
That is historical. So
Okay.
that will be probably based out of Carmel Valley, so a
Okay.
little central California,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
right after the Mexican American War.
Oh, wow. Okay. All right. I'm sensing a little bit of a theme from you with the Mexican American War, which is good because you seriously, I mean, try and find fiction that has the Mexican American War and you're not going to find a whole lot. So,
Well, and especially where I wanted to highlight California again.
yeah.
Um, and, one of the nicest compliments I got for writing was, oh, it's not your normal cowboy Western.
Right.
So that was really good.
Yeah.
And so it's nice to know that some people are enjoying that because, like you said, there's not much on it.
Right. Yeah. And I think it's good. And one of the things and that's one of the reasons I love fiction is because fiction so often can introduce people to ideas, themes, points in history, topics that you may not have been familiar with. And then you find yourself doing a deep dive on Google or getting nonfiction books about it and learning about it. It's really cool. So I love that. So,
Yeah.
All right. For those of you who want to check out Kendall's books, all 3 of the novellas are free on Kindle Unlimited. So you can check them out there if you have a Kindle Unlimited subscription. Otherwise, they are a whopping 99 cents. So I would say just get all 3 and just go straight through and read them all because they will make your heart happy.
Well, and also we didn't mention this because I don't think I think we've been missing each other so much. A couple of the Cornerstone authors then did short stories.
That's right.
That had to have some connection to the larger novella. So the title of that is A Noble Collection.
Okay.
And I believe there's 9 of us. But anyway,
Okay.
that should be coming out in March of 2025.
So it's kind of like a bonus short story. And does it carry on the same characters?
So the main, again, because it's so short,
Yeah.
the main characters are the best friends of
Okay.
of the hero and heroine in the Noble Intent.
Okay, awesome. So a little bit of a bonus. You can look forward to that in March, which is again why you should follow Kendall on Amazon because it just tells you that it's available. But where else should readers find you?
Instagram,
Okay.
so author Kendall Hoxsey.
Mm-hmm.
And I am on Facebook. Same author
Yep.
Kendall Hoxsey.
Yep.
And let's see, and then my website, and I need to get better about doing newsletters.
Newsletters, I find with authors, you either totally embrace them and love them, or it's like the hardest thing you'll ever write in your life.
Well, I mean, you're always so nice. Oh, Kendall, come on, just a photo of the vineyard. Just talk about what's going on. They want to know this.
Well, how many of us live on vineyards? Like, I mean, you do have a unique life. Let's face it.
Yeah. So, and my kids and the dogs.
Mm-hmm.
So the Frenchies are fun too.
The Frenchies are fun. We like the Frenchies.
Yes.
All right. Well, Kendall, thank you so much for being here. And this is a blast. And I can't wait to see more coming out from you in the future.
Thank you, Jamie.
And that's a wrap for today here at Manlet Musings. I hope you join us again. And if you want to, be sure you like and subscribe here at your favorite podcast player or on YouTube, because you won't want to miss all the wonderful alerts that let you know when we have another conversation for you to eavesdrop on.